Hello, my name is Clement and I'm a practicing barrister specialising in employment law. And today we're going to talk about discrimination arising from disability, which is found at section 15 of the Equality Act 2010. And it says this: a person A discriminates against a disabled person B if A treats B unfavourably because of something arising in consequence of B's disability, and A cannot show that a treatment is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. So what does that mean? Let me explain by giving an example. With direct discrimination, it's fairly straightforward, because the claimant is alleging that they were treated less favourably because of their disability. Discrimination arising from disability is less so. So let me give an example. The company We Care Less About Our Workers Limited has a policy that if an employee is off sick for 5 days within a period of 12 months, they are automatically dismissed. Jack the lad had 5 consecutive Mondays off sick and he was automatically dismissed. His defence was, quote unquote, "I have been having some really good weekends. You should try it too." Josephine Bloggs, aka Jo, suffers from a disability. She was also dismissed when she had 5 days off sick. She appealed against that decision, and she said but for her disability she would not have been off sick. The company accepted her version of the events, but said, quote unquote, "The policy is the policy and it would be unfair to treat you differently to anybody else." It's plain to see that Jo was not treated less favourably because of her disability, but that she was treated unfavourably because of something arising from her disability, being the sick leave. Here you could see how Jo may have a very good case for arguing that she was discriminated against for something that arose out of her disability. The lesson to take away from this example is if an employee has a disability and acts in a way that calls into question their conduct and or performance, the employer needs to be extra cautionary in subjecting that person to disciplinary proceedings. They might well do better to investigate the cause of the behaviour rather than focus solely on the behaviour itself. Hello, my name is Clement and I'm a practicing barrister in employment law. Today I'm going to talk about direct discrimination and harassment under the Equality Act 2010. To do so, first I turn to section 13 of the Act, which says this: a person A discriminates against another B if, because of a protected characteristic, A treats B less favourably than A treats or would treat others. Before I move on to the definition of harassment, 2 things are worth noting here. Firstly, the words, and I quote, "because of a protected characteristic," are not necessarily referring to a protected characteristic that B, the victim, possesses. B may well be treated less favourably because of a protected characteristic possessed by someone else, for example, B's partner. Secondly, the words, and I quote, "less favourably than," end quote, are no different from the more familiar, everyday comparative term of worse than. I now turn to the definition of harassment, which is found at section 26 of the Act. This says, a person A harasses another person B if A engages in unwanted conduct related to a relevant protected characteristic, and the conduct has the purpose or effect of violating B's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment to be. Now, the relevant protected characteristics are these: age, disability, gender reassignment, race, religion or belief, sex, and sexual orientation. The best way to describe how these work in practice is to use real characters. Let's use Adam, Brenda, Clive and Desiree, aka Team ABCD. Let's say Adam is the discriminator. Brenda is the victim, i.e. the one against whom Adam discriminates. Clive is a colleague. He is the actual comparator and the one to whom Adam's treatment of Brenda is compared. Then, last but not least, Desiree, who for now is simply a colleague of the three. Now, one day, Adam acted in such a way towards Brenda which could only be based on the protected characteristic sex. It was obvious that Adam's treatment of Brenda was worse than he treated Clive in similar circumstances, or would have treated a man. Immediately, Brenda recognized this to be less favorable treatment and associated it, quite rightly in my view, with direct discrimination because of the said protective characteristic. Now, in the meantime, Desiree hasn't done very much, but now was the time for her to take centre stage. The curtain was up and she was fuming at Adam's conduct. Unacceptable, she thought. Then she remembered attending one of my training sessions on harassment, only last year, during which, being attentive, as she was, and no doubt still is, sitting in the front row, she took comprehensive notes and recalled, which, to her delight, was still in her pocket. She took out the notes and discovered that Adams had engaged in unwanted conduct related to, as she perused the list fastidiously, a relevant protected characteristic being sex. But that wasn't all. She checked further and noted that Adam's conduct had the purpose or effect of violating her dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating or offensive environment for her. It then dawned on her that she was not only fuming, but she had been harassed, and raised a complaint of harassment, which in my view was entirely meritorious. So to recap, Adam discriminated directly against Brenda, a woman, the victim, because of a protected characteristic, i.e. sex. Clive, a man, was a comparator against which Adam's treatment of Brenda was compared. Desiree is also a victim because Adam's conduct, which was unwanted by her, amounted to harassment, so she wasn't happy either. Until next time.